Right. Hello, everybody. Alright, so today we are looking at really the rise of the Ottoman Empire. So, our bell ringer, we had three different questions, and we're going to go over those three questions here in this video before we get started with our notes. So, our first question for our bell ringer is, what is an absolute monarchy? So what you probably should have taken away from that, in an absolute monarchy, the monarchy has absolute authority over the territory that they rule over. Okay, and when I say monarchy, I'm referring to either a king or a queen. Now, usually these absolute monarchies can basically say, I'm legitimate in terms of having power because I have divine right. And what that means is that they were chosen by God to be king or queen, and therefore they should have absolute authority because God has given them that authority. Okay. All right, our second question is, how did John Locke and Thomas Hobbes differ on human nature? Now, this should be, again, review. So John Locke, in terms of human nature, he thought for the most part people were good. People act morally, however, sometimes there are a few bad apples in the mix. And then Thomas Hobbes believed that fundamentally people were cruel, greedy, and selfish. Now, this is then going to determine their role of the government. So Thomas Hobbes, believing that people are greedy, selfish, and bad, he thought that the role of the government is there really to have absolute control over people. Okay, because if people are naturally bad, we need to maintain order and control those quote-unquote bad people. John Locke, however, believed that the role of the government was there to protect your natural rights. Natural rights meaning that you are given these rights by your Creator, and no one should be able to take them away from you. Specifically, John Locke believed that we had three natural rights, including life, liberty, and property, and it was the role of the government to protect those natural rights. All right, so let's transition now into our actual notes. And like I said at the beginning, we are going to be examining and identifying both the rise and impact of the Ottoman Empire. Okay, because typically when people think about empires, they often think of, the Roman Empire in ancient times, and then maybe more modern times, people think of maybe the British Empire. In between those two empires, though, our middle major empire is going to be the Ottoman Empire. So let's start with the rise to power. There are going to be a couple of different things that are going to allow the Ottoman Empire to, i.e., rise to power. The first thing is the chaos of the Mongolian invasions. So remember back to last semester when we talked about the Mongolian invasions in Eurasia. That is going to lead to chaos within the region. Okay, and that will that's really the foundational building block of allowing the Ottomans to rise to power in the region. Now, it's one thing to have chaos. It's another thing to take advantage of that chaos, to be able to manipulate that chaos for your favor. And the way that the Ottomans are going to be able to do that is with technology. Okay, so the Ottomans had technology on their side, specifically in the use of firearms. Okay, gunpowder had been invented in Asia, specifically in China. And the Ottomans were able to use gunpowder and firearms to help expand their empire. And for that reason, historians will often refer to them as a gunpowder empire. Now, the Ottomans don't really get, quote-unquote, I don't like to say moving and grooving or on the world stage because they had already been on the world stage, but the thing that's really going to solidify them in history is taking over and capturing Constantinople. Again, we talked about this last semester. So the Ottomans are going to destroy what was left of the Roman Empire in terms of the Byzantines by capturing Constantinople in 1453. Okay, and we can see that here on this map right there. Constantinople is right there. Upon capturing Constantinople, they will rename it to Istanbul, which you're going to read about what that means here in just a little bit. Now, along with capturing Constantinople and taking down the Byzantine Empire, the other major reason why this is important is because they were able to gain control of a very important trade route here between Europe and Asia. Okay, and that's really going to be one of the things that's going to allow this empire to exist for so long. And then the Ottoman Empire will reach its height in the 16th, 17th century, and then it will go into a roughly 200-year decline and will finally collapse in the early 20th century. Not even 100 years ago, which is kind of cool to think about. Okay, so that's our rise to power. Let's now look at what was life and society like within this empire. The foundational principles of the Ottoman Empire is Islam. Okay, the Ottoman Empire is going to be an Islamic empire, and that's very different because in Europe in this time period, most of the kingdoms, if not all of the kingdoms, I should say, were Christian, either being Catholic or Protestant. Okay, so again, foundational principles, Islam. Now the chief leader, and this is a picture of one of them, this guy here was known as Solomon, but the chief leader is known as the Sultan. Okay, now the Sultan, like I just said, he's the chief leader, and he had a lot of power, you guys. He had absolute religious authority over his people. Okay, because think about it. If your empire is founded on religious doctrine and religious ideals, the leader of your empire is probably not only going to have political authority, but also religious authority. Now, in order to help control such a vast empire, the way their government system was set up, so you have the Sultan at top, they have complete religious and political authority, and then underneath, the empire would be divided into districts, different provinces, and then controlled by bureaucratic officials. Okay. All right. Now, generally, the empire was very, I don't want to say very tolerant, but they were much more tolerant of non-Muslims than other Islamic areas in the world. Let's say you were a Christian or a Jew who was living in the Ottoman Empire. For the most part, your life was pretty good. You weren't forced to transition over to Islam or convert to Islam. However, if you continued practicing Christianity or Judaism, you were quote-unquote fined and you had to pay a tax. Now, the Ottomans, specifically the Ottoman sultans, were very enthusiastic in terms of the arts. Okay, because usually when an empire is able to dive into the quote-unquote art area, usually that shows power and wealth. Okay, look at our empire, we have all this money, we can, make all these buildings, we can hire people to make these statues. Similar if we think back to the Renaissance time period in Europe. So artists would come, from all over the world to, reap the rewards of that. Now, along with that, their location, and we kind of already talked about this, the location of the Ottoman Empire and their use of trade is going to help them also become wealthy and, again, very powerful. And they produce a lot of different things like rugs, silk, other textiles such as clothing, jewelry, arms, and armor. Okay, we are going to wait to talk about the downfall of the Ottomans because that will happen after World War I. Okay, all right. So after this video, you will have a very, very short reading where you're going to learn more about the Sultan known as Suleiman I, which that's a picture of him, and why he is remembered as a quote-unquote great leader. If you have any questions, you can send me an email, but that is all.